All right, what's up, traders? Welcome back to the channel. Let's go ahead and discuss Bitcoin a little bit. As we've pulled back this week, it hasn't been a very rough pullback or a huge pullback. Let me get rid of yesterday's VWAP as that's completely useless. Here's today's VWAP. You can see that basically we're just chopping around sideways today. And that is, of course, after we did have a pretty big drop yesterday. If we go back and look all the way into Monday here, you can see this is where we opened the week up here around the old all-time high. We did set a fresh weekly high. We did not take out last week's high, however. Price traded right back up into the point of control here on Tuesday, and then rolled over, and the expansion for this week was lower. I'm going to pull this up just so you can see that we're still trading inside of last week's range. Last week's range was a nice expansion week, setting a fresh higher weekly close. That's good. That is bullish continuation. We did get 7 weeks in a row of straight up closes on Bitcoin. So coming into this week, we were expecting a little bit more of a pullback. And that's exactly what we're seeing. If we go look at the S&P 500 on a weekly close or on a weekly basis, you can see we made a higher weekly high this week and we're still up on the week. I mean, this is not terrible. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on the VIX here. I want to see it close back under 1930. If it does close back under 1930, then maybe I can go into next week with a little bit more of a bullish bias. I mean, let's be honest, my long-term bias on Bitcoin right now is still clearly bullish. We look at the daily time frame, you can see that you are well above the 50 on the RSI. One thing that I am a little bit concerned with is this is the first time that we have reached the 40 on the 8-hour time frame since the lows were put in down here back in April. So this was the lows of 2025 that we put in right here. And you can see where we are now. We're all the way back down on the 8-hour time frame. So I was basically watching on the 8-hour time frame yesterday as I posted on Twitter. I was watching this near-term support over here. This is your lowest area of support. I was also watching this candle's close, and I did not want to see a close below that. And we didn't get a close under this candle with this closure yesterday or Thursday, which is yesterday. But we ultimately did break down in the mid part of the day. So during the New York session, we opened much lower and continued lower for the majority of the day. And then we wrapped things up like this. So you can see that there is a little bit of support trying to come in here now at this new 8-hour support. Going back out to the daily time frame, this trend line that you're seeing is coming in here from May the 12th swing low. I just tacked it to May the 15th swing low. Let's go get a double-sided line here just to kind of see what we're going to get with this. Boom, boom, like so. Okay, so fair enough. It does kind of encapsulate all this price action here. It kind of does a good job of holding the highs. There's your breakout point. And then it kind of is acting as support here. So I would have to say that this trend line is currently trying to play out a little bit right now on Bitcoin. So, I mean, that may be a place to watch for the rest of the day going into the weekend. Weekend price action sucks generally as the daily ranges are going to be much smaller. This is that 4-hour support zone right there at 105.096. We go look at the 4-hour chart. You're going to see what 4-hour support I am in reference to. It's going to be right here. This is your lowest 4-hour candle close for today's range. This is the midnight candle. So as of right now, if I had to make a guess on what I thought Bitcoin was going to do for the rest of the day, I would probably assume that Bitcoin's going to come down here, break this double low right here, and then maybe close back above this 4-hour support. If it doesn't close back up above that 4-hour support, then we could see a test on down here at the 786 of the weekly range retracement. This is going to be last week's, right? This is the current low of this week. This is the 786 retracement of last week. So here is that fib, last week's low to last week's high. We're trading inside of last week's range. So I kind of want to keep an eye right here, as if we're not able to close the weekly back under that, then I could probably say then maybe I could look for long entries going into next week for a potential weekly res test of 109.063. Just playing this range that we currently have here. Now today is not going to be the close, Sunday is on Bitcoin, as it does trade 24 hours a day. Sunday will be the monthly close. So when we open Sunday night with a fresh weekly candle, we will also be opening up with June's fresh open candle. And June's month, if we go look at the monthly time frame here, you can see June is going to be more than likely opening up a little bit higher than May's open. So that is consistent with potential bullish continuation. If we go look at the SPX right here, you can see that that yearly opening range is still acting as resistance. And this is after we did get a weekly close above. Very important here. Now, I do not have next week's expected move up yet because I won't be able to put it up until tomorrow, because depending on what the VIX does today going into the close will determine next week's expected move. So I have to wait for the VIX to close before I can calculate next week's expected move. But what we see going on right now is we're still trading inside of this bullish expansion candle's weekly range, but we are under the yearly open. But like I said earlier, as long as we're still above the 50 on the daily, on the RSI here, I still see bullish momentum. If we look at the weekly RSI, you can see we're still well above bullish momentum there. The 8-hour is where I'm a little bit concerned, once again, because we have not came this low on the 8-hour time frame since those lows back in April. Another thing that I was watching here this week was we were looking at this right here, and we were seeing if this support would hold, then we would have a bullish bias here at last week's midpoint, expecting price to break out to the upside as we got something like that over here at the yearly opening range. We did close back under the 8-hour 21 exponential. We based up just under. The difference from this here and where we are now is this yearly opening range was under price. So this would have still been consistent with upside continuation. Now what we're seeing is I wanted to see this block right here stay intact, but we didn't get that. We got the breakdown. This was the expansion lower. Now going into next week, I don't know how bullish I will be. It just depends on what we do with the close. We got a long ways to go before we're even testing the monthly midpoint. The May monthly midpoint is all the way down to 102. So if we do break this trend line on an 8-hour closing basis, or even for me, a 4-hour closing basis, then I will more than likely be looking for downside continuation. But as for today, I think the trade is lower. I think we are going to take out that double bottom that we've created. We'll go look at the XLK versus the XLP. This is tech versus defensive staples. I mean, at best, one could say arguably maybe there's a gap fill happening here. Nothing major happening here with growth versus value. Growth versus value looks the way it should. If we were seeing a rotation back into value stocks, then this ratio would be going down. It is still in the same area that we have been for the last 3 weeks. No major change there. XLK versus XLE. This shows inflationary fears right here. This is when we've seen a pop in inflation, and this is what it looks like now. The exact opposite is taking place, so people are not positioning themselves currently with inflationary fears in mind. And then finally, this is another inflationary fears ratio to look at. You can see clearly when there's inflationary fears, this accelerates to the upside. It is currently accelerating to the downside, currently making a fresh weekly low. So this is still trending in the right direction. So nobody is concerned or positioning themselves currently for any inflationary fears. If we go back over to Bitcoin, as we just took out those lows, did we get a full-on test of the 786? Not yet. And the VIX is also well above that $19.30 area. I will show you that real quick. You can see currently the VIX is way up there. So the VIX is getting a spike right now. There could be some news that is dropping. I do not know. I do not have my news app pulled up right now as I'm leaving the office. I just wanted to get a quick update out there for you guys for the week ending and going into the last month of Q2. We still have one more month left in this quarter, and then Q2 will be finalized, and then we'll be in the second half of the year. Can you imagine that? We've already almost made it to the second half of the year going into Q3. I can't believe it, man. Time flies. I can't get over how fast time is going by. But anyways, now we're getting that test down here. Once again, I'm not seeing any significant volume come in here. And when I mean volume, I'm talking about this over here. I do not care about volume by time. I don't think volume by time tells you enough data. I think volume at price is where you can see the significant differences. As look at this volume node here at a price. What price? 106. Is 106 a big figure number? Yes, it very much is. Right there. Boom. There's your 106 right there. So you can see why there was a massive influx of volume here. You can also see that since that is the point of control, since the majority of the volume traded at this price, it stands to reason that this price would indeed act as resistance going on into the day. It did happen. We are seeing that rotation lower. We are seeing that 786 be tested now. Would I be a buyer right here, right now? Absolutely not. I do not know. Obviously, I would say that the sellers just won out and you're going to see an influx down here. Let's go check this. Remember, we can go all the way down to 103.4. 103.4 is all the way down in this area down in here. I'll mark that just to let me know. And I'll just write 103.4 there so that way I know what I'm looking at. If we get down in this area, then maybe I could be a buyer. Let's go look at the heat map, see if there's any significant change over there. Sorry, I don't even know if you could see that. But okay, so yesterday there really wasn't any liquidity down here. So once we took out this area of liquidity right here, this bright area here, this is important. So this is where the majority of the liquidity was. You can see how there's highlighted portions of liquidity in here. We took that out and then we kind of rotated back up into the range because this is a void area. This is very thin liquidity. Notice how as the day goes on, this area of thin liquidity is filling up. It isn't really filled up. So I would still argue and say this is still thin liquidity. And we have liquidated the majority of the liquidity that we need to liquidate for the day. But is that enough to make me get long? No. I would need to see liquidity like this right at price for me to be able to be a buyer for a bounce back up into the range. We're not seeing that here. There is plenty of liquidity in this, all of this, to take prices much, much lower. So just jumping in here and being a buyer at the 786, not really a good enough reason, in my opinion, to be a buyer. We'll see how it closes out the day. With that, I'll end the video. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Make sure you always trade safe, trade smart, and I'll talk to you guys next week.